Max Verstappen's legacy as a world champion is under question. Ferrari is happy with Max and Norris fighting, and Perez claims his seat is secured for next year. Do consider subscribing. Let's get into the latest F1 news. Ferrari team principal Fred Vasseur has emphasized that the heightened focus on the rivalry between the three-time Formula One world champion Max Verstappen and his title contender Lando Norris is actually perfect for Ferrari's own aspirations in the championship. The iconic Italian car manufacturer, known for its rich racing history, has significantly narrowed the gap to the top of the standings after delivering two impressive weekends at the start of the second-to-last triple-header series in this racing season. In a remarkable performance, Charles Leclerc led a dominant 1-2 finish for the team at the United States Grand Prix. Following that, Carlos Sainz claimed victory in the recent race held in Mexico, with Leclerc finishing not far behind in third place and also securing the fastest lap of the race. However, despite these notable achievements, Ferrari's successes have somewhat been overshadowed by the drama unfolding on the track between the two leading drivers in the championship battle, Verstappen and Norris. Their respective teams, Red Bull and McLaren, have experienced setbacks in the constructors' standings as the drivers have been caught up in their own quarrels, compounded by the less successful performances of their teammates. As it stands, Vasseur's Ferrari squad is now positioned just 29 points behind McLaren in second place after having surpassed Red Bull, the reigning champions, in the standings. Vasseur pointed out that the ongoing focus on the skirmishes between Verstappen and Norris ultimately serves as an advantage for his team. He stated that as long as the media and the fans are directing their attention toward the rivalry between Max and Lando, this situation is favorable for Ferrari. Following Sainz's victory at the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez, he commented, "As long as you are all focused on Max and Norris, this is perfect for us." Vasseur noted that the attention could be shifted to various battles like the one between Toto Wolff, the Mercedes team principal, and Christian Horner, the head of Red Bull, or the interactions between Zak Brown, the CEO of McLaren, and Horner. He highlighted that as long as Ferrari remains under the radar, it allows the team to concentrate fully on their own performance, including their strategies, drivers, and overall team management. "This is a perfect situation for us," he continued. "I believe you in the media will have a lot to say about Max and Lando, and they will dominate the headlines, which ultimately works out well for us." When further pressed about why the current competition between McLaren and Red Bull is advantageous for Ferrari, Vasseur explained that it is crucial for them to avoid any distractions. He added, "We are clear and focused on what we are doing, concentrating on the car and managing the team effectively. We can take it race by race without worrying too much about what lies ahead in the distant future. I genuinely think this approach is paying off for us." Sky F1 pundit Martin Brundle has expressed his deep concerns regarding the reputation of Max Verstappen, fearing that his legacy will be tainted due to his apparent lack of sportsmanship. This critique comes in light of recent events during the Mexican Grand Prix held in Mexico City, where Verstappen's on-track behavior against McLaren's Lando Norris raised eyebrows among fans and commentators alike. During the race, Verstappen faced two separate 10-second penalties for his actions while competing closely with Norris. The first incident occurred on lap 10 when Verstappen aggressively edged Norris off the track as the McLaren driver attempted to overtake him around the outside of turn 4. This move was particularly scrutinized due to the nature of the battle and the risk it posed to both drivers. Shortly after the first penalty, Verstappen was involved in a second incident a few corners later. This time, he attempted a bold maneuver by diving down Norris's inside at the high-speed turn 7, resulting in both drivers veering off the track. While Verstappen managed to rejoin the race ahead of Norris, this reckless driving came at a high cost. He ultimately had to sit in the pits for a lengthy 20 seconds, which was quite detrimental to his race strategy, and he finished in 6th place. This result marked one of his worst performances in the 2024 Formula One season so far. In contrast, Norris secured a second-place finish behind Carlos Sainz, who took the victory in his Ferrari. This outcome has now narrowed Verstappen's lead in the World Championship standings to 47 points, with just 4 races remaining in the season. In his post-race column for Sky F1, Brundle shared his disappointment regarding Verstappen's conduct during the race in Mexico. He mentioned feeling saddened by the way Verstappen handled himself on the track, particularly because he believes this attitude could negatively influence how Verstappen is ultimately viewed in the history of Formula One racing. Brundle elaborated on his thoughts by stating that Verstappen took 2 penalties in quick succession, suggesting that the decisions of the race stewards showed a new level of firmness, which he welcomed. He reflected on the incident in Turn 8, noting that it is not typically seen as a place for overtakes. Verstappen, feeling that Norris had gone off the track to pass him, made an aggressive move that he must have realized could have ended up taking them both out of the race. Fortunately, Norris was well prepared for this encounter. Brundle pointed out that this incident resulted in another penalty for Verstappen for leaving the track while gaining an unfair advantage, and he felt the move could have warranted even more severe consequences, such as a drive-through penalty for dangerous driving. Brundle described the move as shocking, as it not only placed both drivers off the racing line, but also effectively allowed Charles Leclerc to gain position, which enabled the Ferrari team to secure a 1-2 finish at that moment in the race. He further speculated that the delay caused to Norris, who had to stay behind Verstappen until he pitted later, might have cost the McLaren driver a chance at victory given his speed in the latter part of the race. Brundle clearly articulated that while he understood Verstappen often disregards outside opinions, it genuinely saddened him to see such aggressive and reckless driving from a driver with Verstappen's immense talent. Brundle remarked on Verstappen's skills, saying that he possesses more talent than many have experienced in their entire careers, but warned that such sporting behavior could indeed tarnish his legacy, which is regrettable. Following this, Brundle shared that he felt particularly upset about the second incident involving Verstappen and Norris, labeling the Red Bull driver's actions as ridiculous. In the aftermath of the race on Sky F1's coverage, he stated that the first incident could be considered rude and cheeky, while he labeled the second as plainly dangerous, emphasizing the seriousness of the penalties. Regarding the second maneuver, Brundle was notably distressed, reflecting on how the situation developed during the initial incident at Turn 4, suggesting it was all about the battle for position. He observed that Verstappen failed to give Norris enough racing room, and by the time they reached Turn 7, he believed Verstappen was in a moment of what could be described as red mist, acting recklessly. Brundle acknowledged that Verstappen maintained throttle during both encounters, pushing them off the track, and he recognized that the Dutch driver was fortunate not to have received a more severe penalty, such as a drive-through that would have significantly impacted his race. Expressing his admiration for Verstappen's abilities, Brundle reiterated his frustration, stating he believed the driver is capable of so much more and shouldn't resort to such tactics on the track. He suspected that a mix of frustration and perhaps anger contributed to Verstappen's actions, particularly following the earlier incident with Norris, which seemed to weigh heavily on him. When asked about whether this behavior stemmed from frustration, Brundle responded affirmatively, suggesting that all these incidents intertwined and resulted in costly repercussions for Verstappen. He acknowledged that, although Verstappen is known for his aggressive and feisty driving style qualities that fans appreciate in Formula One, there does come a point where respect for racing limits must be upheld. Brundle firmly stated that the second incident notably crossed this vital line. Formula One power unit manufacturers Honda and Alpine, which operates under the Renault brand, have come to agreements to pay fines due to some procedural mistakes they made regarding the FIA's engine cost cap rules. These rules were put in place to ensure that all manufacturers keep their spending under control and maintain a fair competition among teams. Honda has agreed to pay a fine totaling $600,000, while Alpine will pay a fine of $400,000. Both manufacturers settled these matters by accepting what is known as an accepted breach agreement with the FIA. This type of agreement allows them to resolve the issues without further legal action or severe penalties. According to the FIA's report, Honda Racing Corporation, commonly referred to as HRC, did not submit accurate reporting documents. The problem was that their cost calculations included expenses that should have been either excluded or adjusted properly. This lack of accuracy in documentation led to Honda facing a significant fine. On the other hand, Alpine faced a slightly smaller fine because they were late in providing certain documents that the FIA needed for their investigation. The FIA determined that Alpine had omitted relevant information, which contributed to their lesser fine compared to Honda's. Fortunately for both companies, the breaches were considered minor by the FIA, which believed that both Honda and Alpine acted in good faith throughout the process. This positive conduct allowed the FIA to offer the accepted breach agreement, which both Honda and Alpine accepted earlier this month. This agreement is a way to resolve issues amicably without escalating the situation further. Additionally, both Honda and Alpine will be responsible for paying any administrative costs that the FIA incurred while investigating their violations of the cost cap rules. The FIA stated in its report that the cost cap administration recognized that both power unit manufacturers worked cooperatively and in good faith throughout the review process. They made efforts to provide any additional information and evidence when requested, and did so in a timely manner. The FIA also clarified that there is no accusation or evidence suggesting that either Alpine or HRC gained any unfair advantage as a result of their breaches. This reassurance helps to maintain the integrity of the competition and shows that both manufacturers did not intend to manipulate the rules for their benefit. Starting in 2023, Formula One implemented a cost cap that engine manufacturers had to adhere to for the very first time. Although all manufacturers managed to stay within the budget limits set by the FIA, both Alpine and Honda were noted in September for their procedural issues concerning the regulations. It is worth mentioning that all 10 teams competing in Formula One fully complied with the cost cap requirements for the 2023 season. This compliance shows a general commitment to maintaining a level playing field in the sport, though the minor breaches from Honda and Alpine revealed that there are still areas that need attention. In a notable development within the context of Formula One, Alpine's owner, Renault, recently made the decision to end its long-standing power unit program at the Viry-Châtillon facility in France. This decision comes ahead of the 2026 Formula One season and marks a halt in the development of new engines by Alpine. Looking forward, it is expected that Alpine will instead partner with Mercedes to use their customer engines as the rules in Formula One evolve into a new regulatory era. This change represents a significant shift in Alpine's strategy going forward into the future of the sport. Franco Colapinto has conceded he doesn't fully agree with the steward's decision to punish him with a 10-second penalty for late race contact with Liam Lawson in Formula One's Mexico Grand Prix. The Williams driver was attempting a pass on the RB driver around the outside of Turn 1 in the closing stages of the race when his rear right wheel swiped the front wing from the RB driver. Although running tight to the white line, Lawson was judged to have defended aggressively, but he had left just enough room for Colapinto to remain on the track. Despite the stewards reflecting that both drivers were compromised for Turn 2, and Colapinto more so, the fact that the Argentine had stayed on the power through the left-hander led to the decision that he was predominantly to blame for the resulting contact, which saw Lawson pit as a result of his damage. Asked for his view on the penalty, Colapinto told F1's YouTube post-race show, "I don't fully agree. I think it's something similar to what happened with Lando Norris and Max Verstappen in Austin. It's one of those where the driver that is inside pushes you off the track. I think, slightly ahead at the apex, and he braked at the last moment and ran wide, pushing me off, and then he broke his front wing alone." Offering an explanation for why he believes he was sanctioned, Colapinto added, "I think it's more related to what happened to Liam that he broke his front wing. That is not my fault, and they looked more at that consequence. That's why I got a penalty. So look, I think stewards shouldn't be looking at the consequence of what happened after the little incident." Lawson himself dismissed malice from Colapinto, telling Sky Sports F1, "I gave him space in Turn 2, he came with a lot of speed, more than I was expecting. I tried to get out of it but caught his rear wheel. It's not really his fault or anything like that, I just think it was a clumsy incident." Colapinto finished the Mexico Grand Prix 12th and remained in this position with his penalty with Esteban Ocon too far back to capitalize, while Lawson was 16th after his repairs. The incident, which saw Lando Norris collect a 5-second penalty while battling Max Verstappen in Austin, and the latter's actions in Mexico, which resulted in a pair of 10-second penalties, have resulted in calls for the guidelines surrounding overtaking and defending to be reviewed. Changes could be in place for the final 2 rounds of the year in Qatar and Abu Dhabi, with drivers set to discuss protocols at the penultimate event. Adding his thoughts, Colapinto said, "It's not something to complain about. I think the drivers need to try to understand what we can do better, to not get these penalties that sometimes are very favorable for the guy who is on the inside and doesn't leave much room of what to do for the guy on the outside. We just need to try to understand that better, as for all of us as drivers, for those penalties not to be coming constantly." Red Bull driver Sergio Perez has reiterated his stance that he's not going anywhere anytime soon, following recent F1 retirement rumors. Perez was the center of speculation that he could announce his retirement from Formula One around the time of the Mexico City Grand Prix, with the home hero enduring a difficult run of form in F1 2024. Perez was signed to a 2-year contract extension by Red Bull earlier this season, taking him through until the end of the F1 2026 season. But while this may have been a bid to bolster Perez's confidence and assure his future, a different approach to Red Bull's previous extensions for Perez, it's coincided with his least competitive season as a Red Bull F1 driver. Having scored 85 points in the first 5 race weekends of F1 2024 to help his team sit in a strong lead in the Constructors' Championship, he has scored just 65 points in the 15 race weekends since. He occupies 8th in the Drivers' Championship, with Red Bull slumping to 3rd overall. His performance level has led to all sorts of rumors emerging as the season progressed, such as him being replaced mid-season at the conclusion of this season, or perhaps announcing his retirement from F1 during his home race weekend in Mexico City. Following the publishing of this rumor, Perez took to social media to share a meme from the 2013 movie The Wolf of Wall Street to proclaim, "I'm not leaving," to pour cold water over the speculation. Asked about his social media post in the build-up to the United States Grand Prix, the Red Bull driver told media, including PlanetF1.com, "I just felt like it's been every year for the last 2 years or so that someone creates this rumor and then everyone picks it up. Then all my fans, obviously I'm very conscious that there are a lot of people coming to support me at the Mexican Grand Prix, and they probably might be expecting something that is not true. And I felt the need to just say, look, I think it's just not correct to spread just rumors like this without knowing the facts." Perez's weekend in Mexico duly passed without any shocks, although the home hero endured a weekend to forget. Following on from the disappointment of his first lap collision in 2023, Perez failed to progress beyond Q1, and an electric first lap proved a false dawn. He was given a time penalty for a false start and duly came home as the last classified runner following a clash with Red Bull stablemate Liam Lawson. Posting on social media after the weekend, Perez shared images from the event as he posed with pictures of the Mexican flag in the Foro Sol Stadium section and vowed to try again next year. "Thank you, Mexico. This wasn't the weekend for us," he said. "I'll never give up and I'll try again next year. I'm taking all of you in my car with me." Perez's father, Antonio Perez Garibay, may have had little to celebrate on the occasion of this year's race, but still was an enthusiastic supporter of his son in the paddock. Papa Perez, who recently recovered from a medical emergency triggered by his son's clash with Carlos Sainz during the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, is well known for his affection and unwavering fandom of his son, and the popular character took to his own Instagram page to pay tribute for what Perez has achieved during his motorsport career. The post shared images from Perez's first race, as well as his last, and praised him for the journey over the last 12 years of his F1 career. "Your first Formula One race of Sergio Perez 2011 Australia Grand Prix," Perez Garibay posted, "and your last race Mexico Grand Prix 2024. Your maximum pride, the most beautiful flag in the world. Always together until the end of the movie. Thank you, Checo Perez. Today, you are the most known Mexican on the planet. You have to be very proud of what you have achieved. Always remember that the worst race of your life was in Mexico, when you were 12 years old and you were kicked out of karting in your country 2002. And look at what you have achieved and the best is yet to come. I love you, son." That's it for this